Blake Lively just revealed her expert witness list: 6 specialists, marketing professors, social media analysts, and the psychologist who literally invented the term DARVO. That's not a legal team. That's a sales pitch. Before we go further, if you're following this case, hit that subscribe button. This story gets deeper every week, and you'll want the updates as they drop. Let's get into it. Here's what matters. When you have a smoking gun, you don't need 6 experts to explain what smoke looks like. You show the gun. Blake Lively isn't showing guns. She's showing opinions. The centerpiece? Dr. Jennifer Freyd. She coined DARVO: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Lively's bringing her in to testify that Justin Baldoni flipped the script, made himself the victim when Blake was the real target. Except there's a problem with that theory. It only works if Baldoni attacked first. Timeline check. Blake Lively's promotional tour went viral for all the wrong reasons. The public turned on her organically. Interviews resurfaced. Tone-deaf moments. The internet smelled something off and they piled on. That happened before Baldoni hired crisis management. Think about that. The narrative Blake wants you to believe is that Baldoni orchestrated a smear campaign. But the hate was already trending when he brought in PR defense. That's not DARVO. That's jujitsu. He used her momentum against her. Ask yourself this. If someone's about to get destroyed online and they hire reputation managers to protect themselves, is that an attack or is that survival? Let's talk power dynamics, because this is where the case gets fascinating. Blake Lively wants a jury to see her as the employee, Baldoni as the boss. Standard workplace harassment framework. Vulnerable actress, predatory director. That story works in most scenarios. But Blake Lively isn't most actresses. She's married to Ryan Reynolds. Combined, they're worth hundreds of millions. They have influence that spans studios, brands, global campaigns. When this lawsuit was filed, Baldoni lost representation. Blake didn't. Who had the power? Here's what Baldoni's team will argue. If Blake felt harassed, uncomfortable, or unsafe, she had a dozen ways to shut it down. A text to her agent. A call to her lawyer husband, who understands contracts better than most entertainment attorneys. One email to the studio. She didn't send any of those. Instead, months later, after the internet turned on her, she filed a lawsuit. That timing isn't coincidence. That's strategy. Remember that point. We'll come back to it. Now, let's dig into these expert witnesses. Blake's team has assembled an academic dream team. Professors from USC, marketing communications specialists, social media forensics analysts. Their job? To prove the internet was manipulated. Dr. Aaron Collada reviewed posts across TikTok, Reddit, forums, YouTube. His conclusion: he found indicators of a coordinated digital campaign. Negative sentiment about Blake spiked in August 2024. Positive sentiment about Baldoni increased at the same time. But here's the issue. Correlation isn't causation. August 2024 was when Blake promoted the film. That's when she flooded media cycles with interviews. Of course, sentiment shifted. She was everywhere. When you're promoting something, especially with a tone-deaf approach, people form opinions. Loud ones. The internet doesn't need a puppet master to hate someone. It just needs a reason. Blake gave them several. This is why juries matter. These experts can present data, charts, trend analysis, but a jury decides whether it passes the smell test. Did Blake get targeted by bots? Or did she misread the room and pay the price? Let that sink in. Baldoni has his own expert, a CEO from a crisis PR firm. Their argument cuts deeper. If this was a coordinated attack, it would have taken time to build. Bots need setup. Influencers need briefing. Campaigns need rollout. But the backlash against Blake was instantaneous, organic, the kind of viral moment that happens when the internet collectively agrees. This ain't it. That's the defense Blake has to overcome. She needs to prove Baldoni didn't just respond to criticism. He manufactured it. And so far, the evidence for that claim lives entirely in expert testimony, not hard proof. And oh, smoking gun. Just smoke detectors going off. Let's address the harassment allegations directly, because this is where Blake's case either stands or collapses. She claims Baldoni created a hostile work environment, inappropriate comments, boundary violations, a power imbalance that made her vulnerable. But discovery documents tell a different story. Blake requested advanced intimacy in scenes that didn't require it. When Baldoni pushed back, She framed it as him being difficult. There's text evidence showing she had significant creative control. She wasn't sidelined. She was a producer with final say on key decisions. And then there's the lip-biting incident Blake cited as harassment. Except the context shows she initiated more physical scenes than the script called for. That's not victimization. That's creative disagreement being repackaged as abuse. This matters because harassment has a legal definition. It requires a pattern of unwelcome conduct severe enough to alter working conditions. Disagreements on set? That's filmmaking. A director being firm? That's directing. Blake needs to prove this crossed the line into illegal conduct. Expert testimony about DARVO won't do that. Only evidence will. Think about this. She had power. She had access to lawyers. She had the ability to file complaints in real time. She didn't. Instead, she waited until public opinion turned against her, then weaponized the legal system to reclaim her narrative. That's not justice. That's damage control. Here's where it connects back to the DARVO strategy Blake is using. Dr. Jennifer Freyd's research focuses on how abusers flip the script when confronted. They deny wrongdoing, attack the accuser, and position themselves as the real victim. It's a genuine psychological phenomenon that happens in toxic relationships and institutional abuse. Blake wants the jury to see Baldoni as the textbook DARVO case. She spoke up. He denied. He attacked her reputation. He claimed he was the victim of a smear campaign. Except, and this is critical, none of that works if Blake wasn't the original victim, if Blake was never harassed, if Baldoni was defending himself against a false narrative, then what she's describing isn't DARVO. It's projection. She's accusing him of the exact tactic she's using. Let that sink in. The circumcision discussion. Yes, we have to address it. Blake claims Baldoni brought up inappropriate topics on set, including discussions about circumcision that made her uncomfortable. This allegedly plays into Dr. Freyd's expert testimony as evidence of boundary violations, but context matters. Baldoni co-hosted a podcast that discussed personal, vulnerable topics, masculinity, parenting, cultural practices. If he mentioned circumcision in the context of a broader conversation about fatherhood, is that harassment? Or is that just an awkward moment on a long shoot? Juries will decide whether discomfort equals harassment. Because if every uncomfortable conversation on set qualifies as abuse, Hollywood would be one endless lawsuit. Now let's talk about what Blake is really up against. The burden of proof. Civil cases require a preponderance of evidence. More likely than not, 51% probability. That's a lower bar than criminal court, but it's still a bar. Blake needs to prove Baldoni harassed her. She was powerless to stop it. She suffered damages as a result. He orchestrated a smear campaign to silence her. Every one of those claims has a counterargument backed by discoverable evidence. Texts showing her authority on set. Her promotional missteps documented in real time. The organic nature of the public backlash. And here's the kicker. If the jury believes Blake had equal or greater power than Baldoni, the entire harassment framework collapses. You can't claim workplace victimization when you controlled the workplace. Remember that point about timing? Here's why it's devastating to Blake's case. She filed this lawsuit after her public image tanked, not during filming, not immediately after production wrapped. Months later, when she needed a villain to explain why the internet hated her. That delay raises questions. If the harassment was severe, why wait? If Baldoni was dangerous, why stay silent until it became strategically convenient? Baldoni's team will argue this lawsuit is reputation rehabilitation disguised as justice. And the timing supports that theory. Let's address the elephant in the room. Money. Blake Lively is wealthy.
Baldoni is wealthy.
This case isn't about financial compensation. It's about narrative control. Whoever wins this lawsuit wins the public story. Blake gets to be the brave actress who stood up to abuse, or Baldoni gets to be the director who defended himself against a false accusation. There's no middle ground here. One of them is lying. The jury will decide who. But here's what we know for certain. Blake's experts can't prove what happened in private moments on set. They can analyze social media trends. They can explain psychological frameworks. They can present theories. They can't show a text message where Baldoni admits to orchestrating a smear campaign. They can't produce a witness who saw harassment happen. They can't point to a single piece of direct evidence that proves her claims. And in court, theories lose to evidence. Every single time. Where does this leave us? Blake Lively hired experts to explain why the internet turned on her. She needs them to argue it was artificial, coordinated, malicious. but the simpler explanation is the one juries tend to believe. She mishandled her press tour. The public reacted. Baldoni defended himself when he saw the storm coming. Oh, conspiracy. No bots. Just consequences. That's not harassment. That's accountability. Here's the broader question this case raises. When does defending yourself become an attack? If someone accuses you publicly and you hire lawyers, PR teams, crisis managers, are you the aggressor? Or are you protecting your livelihood? Blake wants the answer to be aggression. She needs Baldoni's defensive moves to look offensive. That's the only way DARVO works as a strategy. But if Baldoni was simply responding to an incoming threat, everything changes. Self-defense isn't abuse. It's survival. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Blake had the power to end this privately. She had connections, resources, legal teams on speed dial. She chose the public lawsuit route. That's not the behavior of someone without options. That's the behavior of someone who needs a public win. Let's talk about what happens if Blake loses. This case going to trial is already a loss for her reputation. Every filing, every expert report, every discovery document, it's all public. The more this drags out, the more scrutiny her claims face. If a jury sides with Baldoni, Blake doesn't just lose the case. She loses the narrative permanently. She becomes the actress who cried harassment to cover her own PR disaster. That's career-defining, not in a good way. Baldoni, on the other hand, is already rebuilding. He lost representation, but he's positioning himself as the wrongly accused. If he wins, he's vindicated. He's the director who stood up to a false accusation and proved his innocence. The stakes are asymmetric. Blake has everything to lose. Baldoni has everything to gain. Here's my prediction. And I'm saying this with full awareness, some of you will disagree. Blake Lively does not win this case. She might settle. She might drop it quietly. But if this goes to a jury, the evidence doesn't support her claims. The timeline doesn't support her claims. The power dynamics don't support her claims. What she has is a compelling story told by expensive experts. What she doesn't have is proof. And juries don't convict on vibes. So what does this case really tell us? It tells us that in Hollywood, power isn't always about who's in the director's chair. Sometimes it's about who has the biggest platform, the most influential friends, the loudest megaphone. It tells us that legal battles are increasingly fought in the court of public opinion first and actual courtroom second. And it tells us that when someone has every resource to address a problem privately but chooses to go public instead, you should ask why. Blake Lively had options. She chose this one. That choice reveals more about her strategy than any expert witness ever could. This case won't end quietly. It's too public, too polarizing, too expensive. But when the verdict comes down, and it won't be about who hired better experts. It'll be about who told the truth. Right now, the evidence points in one direction, and it's not the direction Blake needs. Was this a legal fight, or was this reputation management disguised as justice? You decide. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Blake's expert witnesses will be enough to prove her case? Or is this strategy going to backfire completely? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're covering every development in this case as it happens. Hit that button, turn on notifications, because this story is far from over.